Bow to her. The ancient voice thundered through the hall. For the maid carries the blood of your queen. 3 days earlier, Evelyn Carter had been scrubbing candle wax from the marble floor of Blackthorn Castle, unaware that every quiet step was carrying her toward a throne. At 26, Evelyn owned 2 faded uniforms, a cracked phone, and exactly $43 in her checking account. Nearly everything she earned went toward her foster mother's medical bills back in Pennsylvania. She had accepted the position at the remote estate because it included meals and a narrow room above the servants' wing. No one had warned her that the owner rarely appeared in daylight, that the windows were covered before sunrise, or that the other servants lowered their voices whenever they spoke his name. Lucian Vale, billionaire, recluse, the man newspapers called the Midnight King of American finance. Evelyn had seen him only once, standing beneath the vaulted entrance as rain swept across the mountains. He wore a black coat, and his face was strikingly pale, almost colorless beneath his dark hair. He looked no older than 35, but his stillness felt ancient. Everyone around him bowed. Evelyn did not. She had been holding a tray of hot tea and trying not to spill it. Lucian's silver eyes paused on her for one cold second before he walked away without a word. By the third night, Evelyn understood the castle had rules no one bothered to explain. Never enter the Western Tower. Never answer voices from behind locked doors. Never remain in the halls after midnight. She followed every rule until she heard a child crying. The sound came from the abandoned music room shortly before 11. Evelyn stopped beside the door, listening. A small voice whispered for help. She should have called the head housekeeper. She should have walked away. Instead, she opened the door. A pale boy sat beneath the grand piano, clutching a silver toy wolf to his chest. He looked about 7, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, with dark curls falling over frightened amber eyes. "Are you lost?" Evelyn asked softly. The boy shook his head. "They said I'm not allowed upstairs." Evelyn crouched several feet away, careful not to frighten him. "Then I suppose we'll stay down here until you feel safe." She removed her cardigan and placed it on the floor between them. The boy stared at the simple gesture as though no one had ever offered him warmth without asking for something in return. A moment later, the room turned cold. Lucian stood in the doorway. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes had changed from silver to a deep ember red. "Step away from him," he commanded. Evelyn rose slowly, placing herself between Lucian and the trembling child. "Not until you stop frightening him." Silence swallowed the room. No servant spoke to Lucian Vale that way. No one met his gaze. Yet Evelyn held it, even as her heartbeat raced. Then the boy reached for her hand. Lucian froze. On Evelyn's wrist, beneath the child's fingers, a faint golden symbol flickered once before vanishing. Lucian had waited 800 years to see that mark, and it had just appeared on the skin of a common maid. Lucian crossed the room so quickly that the candle flames bent toward him, yet when he reached Evelyn, he did not touch her. His gaze remained fixed on the place where the golden symbol had vanished beneath her skin. The boy tightened his fingers around her hand. "Noah," Lucian said, and the command in his voice softened by a fraction, "Come to me." The child shook his head and moved closer to Evelyn. Something unreadable passed across Lucian's pale face. Surprise first, then concern. Evelyn looked between them. "You know him?" "He is under my protection." Then why was he hiding under a piano? The question escaped before caution could stop it. Lucian's silver eyes lifted to hers. Most people would have apologized. Evelyn did not. The boy answered instead. "They were arguing about sending me away." Lucian went completely still. From the corridor came hurried footsteps, followed by Mrs. Holloway, the head housekeeper, and 2 guards in dark uniforms. Mrs. Holloway stopped at the doorway, her face draining of color when she saw Noah holding Evelyn's hand. "Your Majesty," she whispered. Evelyn turned toward Lucian. "Your Majesty." The strange title settled over the room like frost. Lucian did not correct her. "Take Noah to his chamber," he ordered. One guard stepped forward, but the boy pulled back. "Evelyn comes with me. She has duties," Mrs. Holloway said sharply. Noah's amber eyes brightened with tears. Evelyn crouched beside him. "I will walk you upstairs, and then I will return to work. Is that fair?" He considered this with grave seriousness before nodding. Lucian watched her as if every gentle word carried a hidden meaning. They crossed nearly half a mile of corridors before reaching the eastern wing, where the walls changed from polished stone to carved black wood. Portraits lined the passage, each showing figures with the same pale skin and unchanging eyes. In one painting, Lucian stood beside men dressed in clothing from centuries earlier. He looked exactly as he did now. Evelyn slowed. Lucian noticed. You have questions. I think I already know the answer. Say it. She met his gaze. You are not human. The guards lowered their eyes. Mrs. Holloway stopped breathing. Lucian's expression did not change. And yet you are not afraid. Evelyn looked at Noah, who still held her hand. I am afraid, but fear does not decide whether someone deserves kindness. For the first time, Lucian seemed unable to answer. Inside Noah's chamber, Evelyn tucked the cardigan around the child's shoulders and promised to return after breakfast. When she stepped back into the corridor, Lucian was waiting alone. Show me your wrist. Evelyn hesitated, then extended her hand. He held his palm beneath hers without making contact. The golden symbol returned, brighter this time, shaped like a crown surrounded by crescent moons. A matching light appeared beneath Lucian's cuff. His calm shattered. That is impossible, he whispered. At the far end of the corridor, Lady Victoria Graves stood hidden behind a carved pillar, watching the two marks burn in silence. By midnight, she had already decided that Evelyn Carter would not live long enough to learn what they meant. Lucian lowered Evelyn's hand, but the golden light remained beneath his cuff like a warning refusing to fade. You will return to the servants' wing and speak of this to no one, he said. Evelyn studied him. You already know that someone will. His eyes shifted toward the empty corridor where Lady Victoria had been standing moments earlier. That is why you must stay near Noah until morning. Mrs. Holloway appeared at the end of the hall with a folded uniform over one arm. Her expression was controlled, but her hands trembled. Lady Victoria has requested Miss Carter's assistance at tomorrow night's gathering. Lucian's voice turned cold. Denied. She invoked council privilege. Silence pressed against the carved walls. Evelyn did not understand the words, but she understood the look that passed between them. A challenge had been made, and Lucian could not simply refuse it. By sunrise, Blackthorn Castle was alive with preparations. Silver candles were arranged along the grand staircase. Black roses appeared in every hall. Guests arrived in long cars with darkened windows, each stepping into the castle with the graceful stillness Evelyn had learned to fear. She spent the morning with Noah in the library, helping him build a wooden model of the castle while Lucian watched from the doorway. The boy laughed when one tower collapsed. Lucian stared at the sound as though it belonged to another lifetime. He trusts you, Lucian said after Noah left with his tutor. Perhaps he needed someone who listened. You believe I did not? Evelyn looked toward the closed door. I believe powerful people sometimes mistake protection for understanding. Lucian's expression tightened, but he did not argue. Instead, he placed a small silver pendant on the table between them. It bore the same crescent crown that had appeared on her wrist. Where did you get this? Evelyn picked it up carefully. My foster mother gave it to me when I was a child. She said it was found with me. The pendant opened with a soft click. Inside was a faded portrait of a woman with Evelyn's eyes. Lucian stepped closer, his pale face losing what little color it held. Seraphina Vale, he whispered. The last Moon Queen. Before Evelyn could ask what that meant, Lady Victoria entered without knocking. She wore crimson silk and a smile that never reached her eyes. How touching, she said. The king and his maid studying family history. Lucian moved between them. Leave. Not before the council witnesses her. Victoria's gaze settled on Evelyn. Unless you are afraid, she is nothing more than an ambitious servant. Evelyn placed the pendant around her neck. I am not afraid of being ordinary. Victoria smiled. Then serve at the gathering tonight. Lucian turned to Evelyn. You do not have to prove anything. She thought of Noah hiding beneath the piano. She thought of the mark that had awakened under her skin. Perhaps not, she said. But I need to know why everyone else is afraid that I might. That evening, Evelyn entered the grand hall carrying a silver tray. Hundreds of eyes followed her. At the center of the room, Lady Victoria offered her a crystal glass filled with dark red wine. A welcome, she said. Evelyn accepted it, unaware that one drop had been altered to make her appear dangerous before the entire vampire court. Evelyn lifted the crystal glass while the grand hall watched in perfect silence. The liquid inside looked like ordinary red wine, but a faint silver mist curled beneath its surface, too subtle for human eyes. Lucian saw it. His hand tightened around the arm of his chair, Yet Lady Victoria raised her own glass before he could speak. "To unexpected guests," she said, her smile calm and polished, "and to the truth they bring into ancient houses." Evelyn touched the glass to her lips. The first taste was sweet. The second turned bitter. A cold pressure moved through her chest, and the candles nearest her flickered blue. She lowered the glass, suddenly aware that every vampire in the room had gone still. Murmurs spread among the council. Forbidden magic. She carried it into the castle. "The maid has deceived us." Evelyn tried to answer, but her voice would not come. The crescent pendant at her throat grew warm. Across the hall, Noah pushed away from his tutor and ran toward her. Lucian appeared in his path before the child had crossed 10 feet. "Stay back," he ordered, not taking his eyes from Evelyn. The words sounded cold, but his expression held something sharper than anger. Fear. Lady Victoria stepped beside the council table. "The evidence is clear." She entered the royal gathering carrying a human spell designed to weaken our king. Evelyn shook her head. "I did not." Her voice returned as a whisper. "You handed me the glass." Victoria's expression became wounded innocence. "Hundreds of guests saw you accept it freely." The room tilted beneath Evelyn's feet. Golden light flashed under the skin of her wrist, then darkened at the edges as the altered wine reacted with the hidden mark. Lucian crossed the hall before she could fall, catching her by the shoulders and lowering her gently into a chair. The crowd recoiled. "Do not touch her, Your Majesty," one council member warned. "If she carries a binding curse, contact could complete it." Lucian ignored him. "Look at me, Evelyn." She forced her eyes open. His face was pale even for him, almost white beneath the black fall of his hair. "I did not bring anything here," she said. "I believe you." The certainty in his voice silenced the room. Lady Victoria's smile disappeared. Lucian took the glass from Evelyn's hand and held it beneath the candlelight. A silver symbol appeared at the bottom, shaped like a thorn wrapped around a crown. Mrs. Holloway gasped. "The grave seal." Every gaze turned toward Victoria. "A servant could have stolen it," Victoria said quickly. Lucian's eyes burned ember red. "No servant can command Graves' blood magic." The cold inside Evelyn spread toward her fingertips. Lucian placed 2 fingers over the mark on her wrist, and the golden light answered him with a pulse that shook the chandeliers. The council rose as one. "The bond is awakening," someone whispered. "Then separate them," another demanded. "Before she controls him." Lucian looked toward the oldest council member. "How do I stop the spell?" The ancient vampire hesitated. "The poison cannot be removed by medicine. Only a royal blood rite can draw it out." The room fell silent again. Evelyn understood from their faces that the rite carried meaning far beyond rescue. Lucian understood it too. "There must be another way," she whispered. "There is not," he said. He removed his black coat and placed it around her trembling shoulders. Then he faced the council, his voice quiet enough to make every word feel like law. "Clear the hall." Lady Victoria stepped forward. "Lucian, think carefully. If you perform the rite, the court will recognize her as your chosen queen." He looked down at Evelyn, no longer seeing a common maid, but the woman who had protected Noah when no one else would. "Then let the court recognize the truth." The grand hall emptied with the sound of silk, hurried footsteps, and frightened whispers, but the council remained behind the sealed doors, unwilling to surrender its claim over what happened next. Lucian carried Evelyn into the moon chamber, a circular room hidden beneath the eastern tower where pale light entered through a glass ceiling even though midnight clouds covered the sky. Ancient symbols circled the floor. At the center stood a stone basin filled with clear water that reflected no faces. Mrs. Holloway brought Noah to the doorway, but Lucian stopped her with one look. "Keep him outside." Noah reached toward Evelyn. "She saved me, and I will save her," Lucian promised. The doors closed. Evelyn sat on the edge of a velvet bench, wrapped in Lucian's coat, while the unnatural cold continued moving through her. "Tell me what the rite requires," she said. Lucian remained several feet away, as though distance could protect her from the decision already made. "A royal bond must be awakened through blood recognition." "What does that mean?" "I must mark you, and the ancient magic will decide whether to reject the poison or reject me." Evelyn watched his expression. "You are afraid. I have survived wars, betrayals, and 8 centuries of enemies. Fear became useless to me long ago. His gaze dropped to the golden symbol on her wrist. Then you appeared. The honesty in his voice made the room feel smaller. Evelyn stood, though her knees threatened to fail. Do it. Lucian shook his head. You do not understand what the court will call you afterward. They already call me a liar, a servant, and a threat. I am more concerned with staying alive long enough to prove them wrong. For one brief moment, something almost like admiration softened his ancient face. He stepped closer and asked, Do you trust me? Evelyn thought of the way he had shielded Noah, believed her without proof, and placed his coat around her while the court demanded judgment. Yes. Lucian guided her beside the stone basin. He spoke words in a language older than the castle, and the symbols on the floor awakened one by one. He then lowered his voice. The rite may feel cold, but it will not harm you. Evelyn nodded. Lucian leaned toward the side of her neck, pausing long enough to give her a final chance to refuse. She did not move. The touch of his fangs was brief and careful, more like the closing of a sacred seal than an attack. The instant the bond formed, the chamber filled with golden light. Evelyn gasped as warmth rushed through her, driving away the spell that had clouded her senses. The basin shattered its silence with a deep ringing note. Lucian stepped back, his eyes wide. A crown of light appeared above Evelyn's head, while silver letters spread across the floor in a perfect circle. The moon pendant opened by itself. The faded portrait inside changed, revealing not one woman, but a line of queens who shared Evelyn's eyes. Beyond the doors, every vampire in Blackthorn Castle dropped to one knee. Lady Victoria remained standing, frozen in disbelief. The oldest council member stared at the symbols and whispered the words no one had spoken for 800 years. The fated queen has returned. Then the stone basin showed a vision that silenced even Lucian. Evelyn seated on the throne alone, wearing the crown while the vampire king knelt before her. The vision vanished, but its warning remained suspended over the moon chamber like a second darkness. Evelyn stared into the silent basin while Lucian stood beside her, his face unreadable. Beyond the sealed doors, the entire castle waited on its knees. That future is not possible, the oldest council member said from the corridor. His voice trembled despite his age. A queen may stand beside the king, but never above him. The doors opened at Lucian's command. Council members entered slowly, followed by Lady Victoria and Mrs. Holloway. Noah slipped between them and ran straight to Evelyn. She knelt to embrace him, and the crown of light above her faded into a soft glow. I knew you were special, he whispered. Evelyn managed a smile. I was only trying to help you. That is why the mark chose you, Lucian said. Every eye turned toward him. Lady Victoria stepped forward, her elegant composure beginning to crack. The basin showed your defeat. Surely you do not intend to welcome the woman destined to take your throne. Lucian looked at the empty water. Prophecy reveals possibilities, not commands. Convenient, Victoria replied. Especially when the possibility places a former servant above 800 years of royal blood. Evelyn rose slowly. I never asked for a crown. Power rarely waits to be invited, Victoria said. The crescent pendant at Evelyn's throat opened again. A narrow beam of silver light crossed the room and struck an ancient carving hidden behind the council seats. Stone shifted with a deep sound, revealing a sealed alcove. Inside rested a small wooden box covered in dust. Mrs. Holloway stepped back. That chamber has never opened. Lucian approached the box, but stopped before touching it. It was sealed by the last Moon Queen. Evelyn felt the mark on her wrist warm. Without understanding why, she placed her palm over the lid. The lock released. Inside lay a bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon and a hospital bracelet bearing Evelyn's name. Her breath caught. The bracelet listed a date 26 years earlier and the name of a medical center outside Pittsburgh. Beneath it was a photograph of a newborn wrapped in a gray blanket, wearing the same crescent pendant. My foster mother said I was found at a church, Evelyn whispered. Mrs. Holloway lowered her eyes. She was protecting you. Lucian opened the first letter. The handwriting was hurried but clear. To the child who carries my blood, you must remain hidden until the king learns mercy before destiny. He looked toward Noah, then toward Evelyn. The message continued. The Moon Queen does not inherit her power through birth alone. She awakens when she chooses compassion over fear, even before a throne that could destroy her. Silence filled the chamber. Evelyn remembered standing between Lucian and a frightened child, refusing to step aside. The mark had not awakened because of royal ancestry. It had awakened because of a choice. Lady Victoria reached for the final letter, but the paper curled away from her hand and floated into Evelyn's. One sentence appeared in golden ink. "Beware the house of thorns, for it will poison the queen and blame her for the fall of the king." Every gaze moved to the thorn-shaped seal, still visible inside the abandoned wineglass. Victoria's face became perfectly still. Lucian turned toward the council. "Lady Victoria Greys will remain confined to the western wing until the truth is examined." "You would disgrace my house for her?" Victoria asked. "No." Evelyn answered before Lucian could speak. "Your own choices did that." The council stared at the former maid who now stood beneath the moonlight without lowering her eyes. Then the castle bells began ringing by themselves. 12 slow notes crossed the mountains. At the final note, the great throne in the hall split into 2 equal seats, and an ancient voice whispered through every corridor. "The king has found his queen, but only one of them may command the coming night." The divided throne waited in the great hall beneath hundreds of candles, one seat carved from black stone and the other shining with pale silver veins that had not existed an hour earlier. Lucian entered first, followed by Evelyn, Noah, and the council. Every vampire in the chamber remained silent as the ancient voice repeated its warning through the vaulted ceiling. "Only one may command the coming night." Evelyn looked at the 2 seats. "What is the coming night?" The oldest council member, Gideon Cross, stepped forward with a scroll that seemed almost as old as the castle. "A celestial shadow will cross the moon before dawn. During that hour, every royal bond will be tested. If the kingdom recognizes 2 rulers with opposing wills, the protective barrier around Blackthorn will fail." Lady Victoria watched from between 2 guards near the western doors, her expression calm again. "Then the solution is obvious. The maid must surrender her claim." "I have claimed nothing," Evelyn said. "The throne claimed you," Gideon replied. Lucian moved to the black seat, but did not sit. "There is an older law." His gaze shifted toward a pedestal at the center of the hall where servants had placed the crown of thorns, a dark metal circlet no ruler had touched in 3 centuries. "The crown can determine which voice the kingdom must follow." Gideon lowered his head. "The test is not meant for humans." "Neither was the mark," Evelyn said. "Yet it chose me." Murmurs moved through the court. Lucian faced her. "You do not need to do this. If I refuse, they will say I was afraid of the truth. And if the crown rejects you, they will use that against you." Evelyn glanced toward Noah. The boy stood beside Mrs. Holloway, trying to look brave. "Then I will not touch it for them." She walked to the pedestal. "I will touch it for everyone in this castle who has been told their worth depends on where they were born." The hall became still. Evelyn placed both hands around the crown. Nothing happened. Lady Victoria smiled. Then a child began crying somewhere among the servants. The sound was small, nearly hidden by the vast room. Evelyn released the crown and turned toward it. A young kitchen helper stood near the back, holding her little sister, who had become frightened by the gathering. Against every expectation, Evelyn left the royal test unfinished and crossed the hall. She knelt, spoke gently to the child, and returned the girl's dropped ribbon. The crying stopped. At that exact moment, the crown of thorns rose from the pedestal by itself. It crossed the hall in a trail of silver light and settled above Evelyn's head without touching her. Every candle burned gold. Gideon stared at the ancient inscription appearing across the floor. "The crown does not obey ambition," he read aloud. "It follows the one who hears the quietest voice." Lucian lowered himself to one knee. The court gasped. Evelyn stepped back. "Lucian, do not." He looked up at her, his pale face calm. "I am not kneeling because prophecy commands it. I am kneeling because you saw someone everyone else ignored." One by one, the vampires followed. Even Gideon bowed. Lady Victoria remained standing. "This proves nothing," she said. Then the castle shook, not with destruction, but with the deep awakening of ancient magic. Beyond the windows, the moon began to darken hours too early. A silver barrier rose over Blackthorn, flickered once, and turned black. Gideon looked toward the sky in horror. The shadow has already begun. From the locked western wing came the sound of a door opening by itself. A cold voice traveled through the castle, older than Lucian and filled with quiet certainty. "At last, The Moon Queen has returned to release me. The voice from the western wing faded, but the darkness over Blackthorn deepened until the moon disappeared completely. Every candle in the great hall bent toward the same corridor, as though drawn by an invisible breath. Lucian rose and placed himself between Evelyn and the doors. No one enters that wing. Gideon tightened his grip on the ancient scroll. The seal was created by the first Moon Queen. Only her blood could open it. Evelyn looked at the silver crown hovering above her. Then my awakening opened it. Not intentionally, Lucian said. Ancient magic does not care about intention. A soft knock echoed from beyond the western doors. Once, twice, 3 times. Noah hurried to Evelyn's side and took her hand. The golden mark on her wrist warmed beneath his fingers. The voice knows you, he whispered. Before Evelyn could answer, Lady Victoria laughed quietly. You still do not understand. My family did not poison her to destroy the queen. We needed the bond awakened before the shadow crossed the moon. Lucian turned toward her. You served whatever is behind that door. My house guarded it for centuries, Victoria replied. Your throne called it a prisoner. We called it the first king. Gideon unrolled the scroll across the council table. New words appeared upon the faded surface. The first king ruled before the royal houses were divided. He believed humans and vampires could never share power, so the Moon Queen sealed him beneath Blackthorn. Evelyn stared at the dark corridor. Why does he need me? Gideon read the next line, and his face grew pale. The seal cannot be broken by force. It requires the willing command of a Moon Queen. The western doors opened an inch. Cold mist slipped across the floor, carrying the scent of winter stone. The voice came again, gentle now. Evelyn Carter, come forward, and I will show you the mother who gave you away. Lucian's eyes flashed red. It is lying. Evelyn's pendant opened by itself. The portrait inside changed into a moving image of a young woman running through Blackthorn with a newborn in her arms. Behind her stood the same sealed doors. That was my mother, Evelyn whispered. A memory can be altered, Lucian warned. So can a history written by kings, Victoria said. Evelyn looked at Lucian. Did you know she was here? He did not answer immediately, and that hesitation cut deeper than any accusation. I knew a woman escaped the castle 26 years ago, he admitted. I did not know she carried the moon bloodline. But you ordered the records sealed. Because someone inside the court was hunting her child. The doors opened another inch. He feared what you would become, the hidden voice said. Evelyn stepped forward. Lucian caught her hand, not forcefully, but with unmistakable desperation. Do not let it decide who I am for you. She met his gaze. Then do not decide who I am for me. Slowly, he released her. Evelyn walked toward the western wing while the crown followed above her. At the threshold, silver symbols rose across the doors. One command would open them. One command would keep them sealed for another century. The first king promised answers. The council demanded obedience. Lucian said nothing. He simply stood behind her, trusting her choice. Evelyn placed her palm against the cold wood. I will hear the truth, she said, but I will not release you. The symbols flared. The doors remained closed, yet a narrow window of moonlight opened between them. Inside stood not a monster, but a pale man wearing a broken crown. His eyes settled on Lucian, then on Noah. Wise, he murmured. You have learned to command without surrendering. The black barrier over the castle turned silver again. The council exhaled in relief. Then the first king smiled. But the shadow was never meant to free me. It was meant to reveal which child carries my blood. His gaze moved past Evelyn and fixed on Noah. Noah did not move when the first king claimed him, but his small hand closed around Evelyn's fingers with surprising strength. Lucian stepped in front of the boy at once. You will not speak of him again. Behind the narrow opening, the pale prisoner tilted his broken crown. You protected a secret you never understood, Lucian Vale. The child is not merely under your protection. He is the final branch of my bloodline. Gideon searched the ancient scroll, turning brittle pages with unsteady hands. There is no record of an heir. Because the Moon Queen removed his name from history, the first king replied. Noah looked up at Lucian. Is he telling the truth? Lucian lowered himself to the boy's eye level. Whatever blood you carry, it does not decide who you become. Evelyn felt the crown above her brighten. The same warmth moved through Noah's hand and into her wrist, connecting their marks in a thin line of gold. A new inscription appeared across the western doors. The king commands power. The queen commands choice. The child commands the gate. Lady Victoria stared at the words with sudden understanding. That is why he could enter rooms sealed against everyone else. The western wing was answering him. Noah shook his head. I do not want to open anything. Evelyn knelt beside him. Then you will not. The first king's calm expression hardened. A child cannot refuse what he was born to complete. Evelyn turned toward the opening. You still believe blood is stronger than choice. That is why you lost your kingdom. The silver crown descended until it rested lightly above her hair, and the divided throne in the great hall answered with a deep, ringing sound. Lucian looked at her, not as a servant, not as a mystery, but as an equal whose decision he had already chosen to honor. Close the window, he said. Gideon recoiled. Only the Moon Queen may command the seal. Evelyn placed one hand over the crescent mark and the other over Noah's. Then hear my command. No child in this castle will be used as a key, a weapon, or a promise made by someone else. The moonlight between the doors narrowed. The first king stepped closer to the fading opening. If you close this gate, the truth about your mother closes with it. Evelyn's pendant opened, showing the frightened young woman holding her as a newborn. For one painful moment, she wanted every answer. She wanted a name, a reason, and proof that she had once been loved. Then Noah whispered, Please do not leave me. Evelyn looked away from the vision. Some truths explain the past, she said softly. They do not get to sacrifice the future. The doors sealed with a final silver flash. Outside, the shadow released the moon, and light poured through every window of Blackthorn Castle. The barrier turned gold. The council bowed, not from fear, but recognition. Lady Victoria lowered her eyes for the first time. In the great hall, Lucian approached the two thrones and placed the crown of thorns on the silver seat. The old law demands that one ruler command the night, Gideon reminded him. Lucian looked at Evelyn. Then the old law is finished. He offered her his hand before the entire court. Evelyn accepted, but she did not sit. Instead, she called Noah forward and placed him between the two thrones, where no ancient king could claim him again. The castle bells rang at dawn. Far below the western wing, behind stone no one could see, the first king opened his eyes and smiled. The gate had closed, but the golden line connecting Evelyn to Noah had remained, and somewhere beyond the mountains, another child with the same mark had just awakened.